All right, listeners, listen, we got a fun one for you. We got Jeff. When was the last time you were on? Was it 2 years ago?
Probably close to 2 years ago. It was just as we were
God,
starting up independently.
that's what. Okay, so we got it. We got big updates on independently, and then listeners, we have a massive announcement that we're going to tease to you, but we're not going to tell you fully. And so for this episode, Jeff, I think just let's go over sort of you independently, how you see the space, where you see it going, what's going on. I'll throw out some data that I saw last week. Have you looked at the stock prices of the staffing related solutions in our industry right now?
Yep, I have.
Yep.
It's they're in the doldrums, but they're starting to come back, which is interesting, right?
What when you say come back? Well, actually, you know what? So let's start this. Give our listeners just an intro on you. Let's get a brief bio on you. And for you listeners out there, what I love for you to hear is Jeff, I describe you as like the ultimate entrepreneur. And I always laugh in the talent space where I'm like, doesn't feel that entrepreneurial in most cases. But there's people like you who are the epitome of an entrepreneur. So let me just phrase that, Jeff, that is you.
Well, thank you. I do describe myself as an entrepreneur. I've been a lucky entrepreneur, and I don't know if it's kind of that forward thinking of where things are going in our space, or if it's just luck that I bump into things that put two and two together and go, okay, this is where things are going. And so this independently is my third go at a business. And so I started in, traditional IT staffing in the mid 90s. And this is before any technology. If you think about it, the internet was just coming online. There wasn't search. That was Google wasn't really even a mainstay at this point. And we had people rolling resumes, paper resumes on carts from desk to desk, right? And so that's how I started in my career, was the old school manual process of recruitment with no search, no internet, no AI. Then seeing that play out, automation and technology and search started kind of late 90s, early 2000s. You started to see the job boards come online in a big way in that space. And so in the staffing space, VMS and MSP became a big part of the enterprise solutions. And I'll have to phrase, I've always been kind of in the enterprise side of things, working on the entrepreneurial business side and vendor side, building solutions for large enterprise clients. And so built one of the first MSP VMS solutions in the market, then went on to found another company and saw the trend in this thing called that internet that I said came online, and founded one of the first employer of record companies in the space because I saw the ability for companies to find talent through technology advancements, i.e. the internet, things like LinkedIn, etc., and built the first employer of record business in the space, which then merged into with a company doing the same employer of record services for staffing agencies called People 2.0. We went on, did a lot of M&A, sold that company, and now my third business is called Independently, which we've started to do some cool things together, which is awesome and exciting. And where we see the market going is right where you are, Matt, in the freelance open talent space. But, these things called laws and regulations still exist,
Yep.
even though technologists in the human capital space don't want to believe they exist, right? Because it's called it's friction when it comes to the entrepreneurial space as terminology. And that's what independently is all about. It helps ensure that as companies come through that are building amazing solutions in the freelance open talent space that are matching people and helping companies find the best talent globally all over the world. But you have to have the compliance in employing people. And that's where independently comes in, especially in the freelance space where they're called independent contractors. And that law is not going away, guys. So it's a scenario where you got to deal with it. It's okay to have independent contractors on your platform and for enterprise customers to engage independent contractors. But you got to make sure they truly know what they are getting into, and they are small businesses. So that's really important. And that's what independently does. And so this is the third go around as an entrepreneur, like you say, and it's fun running a tech company.
So I have 3 questions, Jeff. Okay. And feel free to either answer one, all of them, stick them in the backlog. So the first question is actually on the EOR front. So we're seeing EORs are the fastest growing segment right now, according to our platform.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I have is always, well, why not just put everyone under an EOR, right? And so that's one question that we'll slice and dice. And then second question is going to be the dynamic between the business leader, who I'd say like me, and the actual talent procurement contingent person. And I'll give a little caveat. So I came into this because in 2012, I was on that IC side, being the freelancer independent contractor. And to me, it was just an easier way to work, right? It was an easier way to show value, to prove my merit. Like I fell in love with that. And then I also was on the platform side and then on the business side with Microsoft. And there's always been this dynamic between, okay, I just want to get something done. I don't care about what HR and procurement and contingent are making me do. I don't want to go to SIA and ProcureCon and all of these talent conferences because I don't care. I just want to get the work done. I want to get my press release out, right? I want to get my app shipped. So that's the second question, is like this interplay between the business team and the program team. And what do you see happening? Because with AI, I mean, one of the things is it's demolishing everything that's not a first principle value. And so if you're sitting in a support area, I'm kind of scared. So that's my second question. And then the last one, which I'm kind of forgetting now, so I'll probably remember it after we hit on the first two, but it's how do you slice and dice this I'll call it this industry, but I also kind of just say everything that's in between. I'm the person that can get the work done, and I'm the person that needs the work. And it seems like we've taken this relationship that's really hard enough as is, but also so simple, and just nuked any sort of simplicity and made it so complicated and a lot of unneeded layers. But so those are my 3 questions. Good luck remembering them because I don't either. Where do you want to start, my friend?
So, the first question around the employment models, right, that are out there and the complexity that there is, especially now that we're working like this remotely in a lot of cases, and you can find clients to work for anywhere around the world, and vice versa, enterprises can find talent anywhere around the world. But we're not just one big world, right? That you can just send a Venmo to someone and pay them like that simply, right? There's borders, there's laws by borders and geographies. And so that's where the complexity lies to make that happen, right? And we're going to probably say this quite a lot. There's a job and a company that needs a worker, and a worker that has skills that needs a job, right? And so how do we make it as easy as possible for this job or this company to get the skills and the worker to do that job, right? And that's the whole premise of almost all 3 of your questions. But the first question around employment and tax laws, once again, the complexity is never going to go away. It's actually going to get harder and harder as more regulations are coming online with all the changes that are happening. Employment and tax laws have been in place for hundreds of years for good reason, quite honestly. And so they're there to protect workers. And quite honestly, it's the biggest source of revenue for most countries through taxation. Taxation. You'll hear me say that again, is the reason or companies and countries use employers as tax collectors. It's hard for a country to come to to you as an individual and hunt down hundreds of millions of people individually. So they go after employers to collect taxes. And so the complexity around employment law has come around payroll deductions, taxes, Employment Standards Acts, etc. And so as we try to simplify it, let's just go freelance, right? It's a great way to simplify it.
Yeah.
No question. But there's why countries are so adamant around making sure you're doing it right is because when you freelance, it's simple. Just send me an invoice and I'll pay your invoice.
And I'd add, Jeff, I think this is a massive point that I'm going to make sure we mark down, because I think one of the biggest problems is that as an industry, we've created so many terms that I believe mean the same thing, but are just because we had a term, the government formalized it, and then we want it to seem different. And so to your point, right? Like, we go freelance and we just, directly work together. That's called independent contracting, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing. And so whether we call it open talent, freelance, gig, whatever, it's all the same thing. It's just an independent contractor relationship. Or if we're sitting in some other countries, it might be an LLC relationship, meaning that company hires LLC, but that LLC is just one person. And that LLC might have to pay $2,000 a year to have the LLC. So I just wanted to call it that point, right? Of like, we have all these terms now, but the reality is it's just let me work directly with who I want to work with, which we had the whole direct sourcing buzz, right? Which maybe that'll come back, but they all mean the same thing.
Oh, very much so. So an independent contractor is a business. So if you think of that, it's very different mindset than employee. So if there, I know there's all sorts of terminologies out there, but you have an employee or you have a vendor, small business, independent contractor. So it's interesting because even the largest companies, when let's say Randstad, massive staffing firm, when they sign a master services agreement with a client, there is a clause in that agreement that says, Randstad, you're an independent contractor, meaning you're independent, small business, you're separate from us.
Yeah.
That is the same mentality with a freelancer, an independent contractor, we call them gig workers, etc. If you're classifying them as an independent contractor or just saying, hey, you're self-employed, you're a business. And so that's really important to think about. And so to keep it clean, you have employees that you are covered under Employment Standards Acts and you pay payroll taxes to. And then there's independent contractors that are small businesses that invoice for their services, and they're responsible for their own taxes, benefits, payroll deductions, etc. And so getting back to that ease of cutting down the in-between, freelancing and independent contractor relationships is super easy. I invoice for my services. And so that is really where a lot of organizations want to go in engaging workers, and workers want to be engaged like that because it also reduces their tax burdens in a lot of countries. So that is really cool, but you got to make sure that that relationship is correct. And if not, it defaults back to being an employee, and all the liabilities under Employment Standards Acts, like for overtime, for severance pay, for payroll remittances, fall back on the employer, or in a lot of cases, the freelancer platforms that are quote unquote employing these workers as their independent contractors doing business at a client.
Now, let me bring up a second point. So the first point is, and all of this under the framing of, one, why should I care, right? Why not just go to Upwork, hire this person through Upwork, spend $1 million plus and not care, right? Like, and that is a reality. A second reality, why not just go to a VA service and hire 10 to 100 VAs, not knowing, not caring, just paying the invoices every month, right? So those are options. And let's not kind of, I have noticed in our industry, people will snuff and be like, oh, that won't happen. And you go, okay, have you ever built a business, been a founder, actually had to own a P&L? You're going to find creative ways to do stuff like that. And so under that purview of that's what's possible, A second element. So the first thing you brought up is taxation, right? And this is all under the lens of if you are that founder, that CEO, that head of product, that even middle manager, if that's you and you're wondering why should I give a shit about this, this is why.
Yeah.
First element, taxation. Government wants to go after ideally as little people as possible to get as much money as possible. So that's why taxes, all built around the employer, right? Second piece that you teased, and I don't know whether we call this it's not legislation, but it's just the fact that you're going to get sued. And who do you sue? And how can you know that when you sue, you're going to get your money back? And so you brought up the example of Ronstadt, right? The worst thing that can happen to enterprises is to all of a sudden work with thousands of people they can't sue. And when we talk about this independent contractor, when I work with a vendor, I can confirm based off the indemnification and the MSA and all these things that if there's a security breach, if all of a sudden people don't show up for work, if they were working more than 40 hours or 30 hours a week, I can confirm that I'm going to sue you vendor and we're going to go to court and we're going to settle. But I know that you have the money and I know that you have the relevant business insurance. And so the second element is is the suing aspect of this. That's not the right word, but
Yeah.
help me. Let's dig into
Yeah. The
this.
legal liability
Yes.
always goes after the deepest pockets first and then goes down the supply chain, right? So let's say you're a freelance platform and you're a gig worker working through a freelance platform or even Randstad at a big bank. Let's just call it a bank because they tend to hire a lot of freelance and contract workers. And so the enterprise is going to get sued in that because the lawyer behind the freelance worker is going to look and see the biggest logo with the deepest pockets, and that's who's going to get named on the lawsuit.
Yep.
Then they may look at the freelance platform because they were part of that supply chain and they're on contract and sue them as well.
Yep.
And if there's anybody in between, there may be sued. But generally it's, the enterprise client, the intermediary, and then the worker. Often the relationship is who's providing, that's looked at by the regulators and legal system, is who's providing the services and who's receiving the services. The intermediary, although, you can say, oh, that's the employer is this intermediary, courts and the regulators have pierced through that veil many times and said, wait a second, this is how the relationship works. That's what we're going to judge. And then the chips then fall after fault is found, right? So as an enterprise client, I want to know that whoever I'm dealing with as my intermediaries got my back. And you mentioned it, has the proper insurances. But more importantly is proactively vetting and making sure that things are compliant and done properly in the employment relationship. So this doesn't even happen. So, one of the things that you're doing at the Human Cloud, but we're doing it independently, is helping build trust, right? That the platforms and the ecosystem in the Human Cloud, the vendors that are there providing those services and helping gig workers find jobs are doing the right things to ensure that that worker is compliant with the laws. Right. So at Independently, we do independent contractor verification and validation. We're just a tech engine, right? That makes sure, hey, based on the regulations in that jurisdiction, you know how to work as an independent contractor and you've got your business set up properly. Boom. We vet that. Then we give the check mark. And so that builds trust that this is done properly across multiple jurisdictions, right? We mentioned the complexity once you get into the global realm, and even across state lines, regulations are different when it comes to this. So the enterprise wants to know that you've got our back. Yeah. And if not, if something does go awry, the contracts will say that, exactly that. You're indemnifying us. So they get sued, liabilities up there, they come back and turn around and look at you as a platform and sue you because you said you were doing something to avoid this employment law situation.
Yep. Tell me, Jeff, who are your customers? Why do they love you? And why? It's a funny question that I always have for founders like you. Why do this? And I'll give you, so last night I was talking with a founder in Australia who just, a year ago sold their, I can't say the exact company, obviously, but sold there in a similar space, right? And the question I always have, perfect. And the question I always have is why this, right? Like there's so many things that you could start. And I have seen some founders will just go to a whole new area. Some founders in our space, they tried it, they hated it, they were not that good at it. They go to a new space, right? They sell. But so for you, why why independently at this time? Who are the customers?
Our customers, we have kind of two types of customers. We built independently to be the standard methodology around worker classification. So is this person should be engaged as an employee, or should this person if it meets the regulation of being a self-employed small business, independent contractor, we can engage them as a vendor. And so with that, we help enterprise customers standardize the methodology of vetting their independent contractors or self-employed small vendors through freelance platforms, staffing firms, direct independent contractors that are working directly through and paid through their AP department on contract in what we would call the SOW programs. You hear about that word quite a bit these days, SOW. It just means a small vendor or independent contractor working directly on contract at a client getting paid directly. And so our customers are enterprise customers, but then what they do is then they mandate that their vendors utilize us so that all of the vendors use the same process for vetting independent contractors. And in the cloud, we hold the defense files. So we talked about liability earlier on. When that enterprise customer gets hit with a lawsuit, they would have to go to 1,000 different vendors and the freelancer platforms and say, give us the documentation so we can defend ourselves. And with independently, all the documentation is the same methodology, it's trusted, it's the standard. And so they want standardization. And so what happens is then they mandate it to their platforms and to the staffing firms they're working with, so that then the secondary customer for us are the EORs, the staffing firms, the freelance platforms that want the standard practice in vetting their ICs properly so that the enterprise will buy from them. What we've been finding, the customers in the EOR and the freelance platform space, they want to say, hey, get that check mark. We are compliant in providing you this freelancer. And so with that, using us as your compliance engine, it's a trusted standard model that meets all legal regulations and policies that a customer would have. And it makes the buying a lot easier because it's trusted that way. So we have both sides of the customers, both the vendor community and the enterprise customers. And why be an entrepreneur and why today? It's funny, after selling People 2.0, we built that up to a massive company. It's the largest EOR in the world. And then we sold it to private equity. Took some time to think about what I wanted to do, did a bunch of consulting with various clients and small businesses and different things like that. And then, this industry seems to bring you back into it around innovation. And so I was always thinking about this as a potential issue, and probably the largest issue on wide scale adoption of freelancers and platformization of this market is the compliance. Enterprises are very conservative. And so without proper compliance, even though they try to contract liability away, they don't want liability or reputational risk by even getting into a lawsuit where their name is dragged through the mud as a poor employer, right? And so it's, thinking about that, this topic became the 900-pound gorilla that's really preventing this future of work that you talk about, I talk about, we all talk about it. The platforms are coming into the market, but they're stubbing their toes. They get in through the back door on a credit card. They get about 10 people in, and they want to get 1,000 people in at Google because they know there's hundreds of thousands of freelancers working at Google. But then they stub their toe because they don't have the compliance mastered yet. And so knowing that this is a big obstacle from that, what we all envision the future of work to be,
Yeah.
this is why I got back into the market and saw the opportunity. And I had the experience from my past lives being in the compliance realms as the largest EOR company in the world. And we built this out.
It's interesting going from 10 to 1,000. I think that's the perfect analogy of where I would say the industry, it's kind of like there's a hose and there's a chair sitting on the hose. Nobody really understands where that chair is. And the end buyers are saying, until you find that chair, we're not gonna let this hose loose, but we're not gonna do the work to find that chair. And we will go spend, 500K plus for Deloitte to do all these transformation projects and stuff, but we really don't expect anything to happen. We just need to do what we've always been doing. So we're in this weird stage. Now, I've been saying it feels like this since 2016. And I think that if we look at the adoption of, and we call it flexible talent now because freelance we think is one aspect. If we say we consider freelance the IC, meaning the individual contributor.
Yeah.
If it's a knowledge work IC, we'll call it freelance. If it's a in-person task based, we'll call it gig. And then if it's like that executive, like interim slash fractional, right? We'll call it like interim fractional. But so what I think happened was in 2016, Elance and Odesk merged, right, to create Upwork. And there was like kind of excitement, but not really, But so that was like, I would consider wave one would be 2016 all the way up till 2020. And you see Upwork and you see Fiverr and you start to see these smaller ones like Catalent came on, Paro came on, still a handful, right? And then COVID happens. And I think that the chair was removed because every chair was removed, but the fire hose, rather than spraying in the right direction, and we'll make this analogy ridiculous, but instead of spraying towards the kids wanting to get sprayed with the hose, it sprayed at the table and it took out the cake and the food, and a bunch of people got hosed. VCs were pissed because their investments didn't work. Some of the, I would say like that era platforms are pissed because they didn't see their venture backed returns. But the industry was still good, right? The premise of, hey, this is a direct connection, working in an outcome basis, quantifying merit, ditching the resumes, low risk in terms of getting started, doesn't work fire fast. But so the core was good, but holy shit, the hose went to the wrong direction and burned a lot of people. And most people don't know that, right? So most people still have that taste of, you go to VCs and you say, hey, doing this future of work freelance thing. They'll say, hey, there's this door over there, walk back through it because we don't want anything to do with this. And rightfully so, because they wasted so much money on this industry. But so with that purview, Jeff, what do you think? I'm going to say went wrong, and what do you think needs to go right over the next 5 years for talent to truly transform? And I will say, like, are you alarmist when it comes to AI? Meaning, like, do you think AI is going to wipe stuff out? Do you think it's going to free stuff? How? Yeah.
Yeah. So the AI question, I'll answer at the end because I think it's fascinating. I think it's only going to make the freelance workforce, the open talent workforce, the flexible talent workforce, even more in demand, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the conversation. On the short term, like what happened with the freelance and the technology future work platforms and all the money that went into it was technology people using the word, we're going to disrupt the staffing industry, we're going to disrupt how people find people, etc. They didn't listen though. They just built technology and spent everybody's money on building technology without getting to the core of what they needed to do was, here's a person with a job, needing a job, and here's a company and a hiring manager that has a need for skills and a job to get work done. So let's take a step back. That's you referring a friend to a manager. It's me taking a paper resume in the past, right? My early days, faxing it through a fax machine, and somebody receiving it on their end going, I think I could use that person. Let me meet them and start them up. And they built all these cool pieces of technology, but they didn't listen to how the clients currently do it, especially on an enterprise level. And there's almost like employment and tax laws. They didn't listen to them. They just thought, oh, that's friction, right? Let's ignore them too. And then enterprise buyers like, no, we're going to get sued if you don't put some compliance into this. They didn't listen to that. The other was the enterprise buyers go, there's an ecosystem we've built over the last 20 years that is our ERP system and an ecosystem that we've already built that is our ERP for bringing this flex talent in.
Yep.
We're just not going to disrupt it because you brought this flashy thing in. When we talk about Upwork, right, how they merged the two companies together, I was in California when they first announced it, and I went to their early meetings and things like that when they're announcing all that, and they still went with the model of here's what we're gonna do. Yeah, that ecosystem that you built over 20 years that is built into your financial systems for reporting and our HRIS systems all integrated, we're just going to ignore that. Well, Upwork, has admitted their failure by going and saying, oh, let's get a partnership with one of the VMS companies, right? And we will plug into that ecosystem versus trying to disrupt it, right? And so listening is a great skill. And I understand when you get $5 to $10 million from a VC, and the VC is the smartest MBA in the world, right? Tech guys got all this money. They just hire a bunch of people and build technology. Listen first, right? And they would have discovered that and could have easily fit into the existing ecosystem and be a better mousetrap than the fax machine that a lot of the current staffing providers are in that ecosystem. And
that
so
there's to your point, there's also one more element that you left out that I think was the linchpin that has been the detriment of a lot of these freelance solutions, and it actually comes into the EOR conversation as well, and that is the service layer. So the core assumption that there's two assumptions. One, that a hiring manager is a hiring manager. No, they're not. No one wakes up wanting to hire. No one goes, says my dream is to build a job description. No one wants that. So they're not hiring managers. They are devs. They are heads of product. They are marketers. They're not fucking hiring managers. Yep. The second one, though, is they don't want to do it. And so why do they use their existing, either it's HR or procurement? Why do they do it? Because they can pick up the phone, they can send an email, they can send a Teams message, and it's not their fault if it's 6 months and they can't find the person. It's not their problem when all of a sudden this resume, they're not digging through it. So those were the two core assumptions that I have seen go massively wrong with a lot of these new solutions. And it makes total sense because if you walked into an investor and they said, hey, what's your flywheel? And you said, well, we have this great service layer. Then the VC would say, go pound sand.
Ooh, they get scared. Say that. Yeah.
He's okay with it, right? Because PE just wants the 5 to 15x multiple. But if eventually, VC, you're going to change the world through a service layer. Not this road, go over there to Chicago, not here in Silicon Valley. So that's the one thing I'd add is that
it's really interesting you say that because it is a people business. We're not buying widgets, right? We go back to that. Here's a person that has feelings, emotions, isn't identical to the person sitting beside them. They're different, right? Different, all sorts of differences. And it's the same with the hiring manager. They're people too. And so trying to automate and understand the cultural differences, things like that a buyer would buy this person over that person it comes down to the humanity of it. And that's very difficult for technologists to duplicate. And so that service layer, when the technology doesn't work as it should or thought it would, needs to be there to comfort things through. And I always call it across the last mile, right? So you can get technology to get it to the ballpark, but often there's nuances that gets it across the last mile where it gets that bum in the chair. And once the bum's in the chair working, guess what? The money starts to flow. Until that happens, there isn't any money flow. And you're just sending resumes through that. So yeah, that was uh, the misunderstanding that you could just sell widgets, right? And they just drop in and you get dollars back. Not true either, right? And so having that, you can build technology, but having that nuanced capability around that service side, or as you know, in AI now, and I'll transition to the AI conversation where the future is going, is we see human in the loop, right? Is the new terminology around even AI.
Yep. And so how do you define that yourself? Because I can go through with, my daily day is spent messing with Claude, building stuff that used to take 10 years, now doing it in 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, but 10 hours, we'll say.
Yeah.
But then having to deal with the human in the loop in terms of if we go 100% with Claude, it's going to break everything. So we still need this human handoff, but at the same time, we can't have it get in the way. So how do you define the human in the loop?
Yeah. So if you think about, air traffic controlling, right? You've got technology everywhere and big screens everywhere, and the air traffic controllers are monitoring everything as they go, and then pinpointing when something looks like it needs to be dealt with. And so that human in the loop model is watching all of those screens and monitors, right? That used to be people doing stuff, right? And coding and coding and coding. Like you say, it would be 3 months doing something along those lines, which now is rapidly moving forward,
Yeah.
but with AI. But when that turns left instead of right, when it should have turned right, you need the human to say, oops, get back and turn left, right? And so it's training the models, it's watching so that it keeps along the path that was intended versus it doing its own thing and taking you deeper down a rabbit hole, which can just blow everything up, quite honestly.
Yeah. So listen, Jeff, last thing is we got an exciting announcement. And let me preface it why we're so excited. One of the big things one of the things that we see is, and it dovetails perfectly into kind of the service discussion and why the chair is still there, on the hose. And that is when we look at where the future is going, and my view on AI is, and it has changed, Jeff. In the past 2 months, it has totally changed. I would have said, it's not going to change that much. I know, and there was some signals for me. So like my building at Microsoft's pretty much all been laid off, right? So I have seen this in impact where it's like, ooh, this is going to be really bad. In building what we've built and being AI first, I have seen what's possible. So I will say, from an AI perspective, I do believe that probably 80 to 90% of work is going to get gutted. Like, I think that the horse and car analogy makes total sense in this case. I think 90% of work is going to get totally gutted. Does that mean that work is going to stop? Hell no. But it definitely is not going to fit this model that we have right now, which is full time or contingent. It does not look like it's going to fit in this model. The third model that we see that has proven success, but has taken, man, we're on year what? About to be year 20 of this freelance open talent experiment. But so we've been building it up slowly. But so this third model makes so much sense. And when we talk about the service layer, these marketplaces, they actually handle the service layer, I believe, in a better way, meaning they help scope, they help source, but they're not like a manual recruiter and they're not like an agency. They're that weird little hybrid in between where they can help you build your ad campaign, understand that no, actually, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this, and then actually source the talent that's required. So there's this third layer, and that's in combination with the EORs, the compliance providers, the payroll, and even within EO. And but the toughest part of all this is it's so tough to know exactly what you need in the various parts. And so it's like building, let's say, a Lego starship, but not all the pieces are in one box. There's like a million boxes that you don't even know, and you just want to go to the Lego store and get one Lego box and build it up. So with Human Cloud, that's what we are, right? We're that front end for work. We assemble all the relevant pieces. When a founder says, hey, I need to go hire 10 engineers, we have the technology that says, okay, Latam looks good here. Check out this marketplace. Poland looks good here. Check out this marketplace. Ooh, you probably need an EOR. This EOR actually subcontracts in Poland, doesn't actually do it themselves. And then this comes into the piece of us. So the IC verification is, I believe, to your point, the linchpin of this industry. And I actually describe you, Jeff, as car fox. Not gonna lie, I know that's probably like bastardizing you, but it makes it so simple. It's like, have you ever bought a car and not looked at the Carfax? Like, the dealership's going to show you something. Is that real? I don't know. Check the Carfax. So that's you, and we get to do this incredible thing with you. That is, we get to have you be the IC verification badge, and every talent marketplace, every EOR, every staffing solution has the opportunity to have your badge so that our buyers know, yes, we can trust they have the IC verification process. So I'll shut up and I'll let you get the final word and tell our listeners what they should be excited about.
Well, you let the cat out of the bag, and we're just so pumped, right? To be your partner in helping the flexible talent ecosystem concentrate on what they're good at, finding people, right? And working with you to find the right people on which platforms is amazing. And then us being, like you say, that linchpin, that Carfax, right? That compliance layer that employers and enterprises just trust so that they can go to market on at scale and concentrate really on finding the right people for those customers. And so I think, you talked also about how AI is coming into play and it is gutting out traditional employment. And why I say it's gutting out traditional employment, because it is. That full-time job that you thought you're going to start a company, work 25 years, get that gold watch, has been gone for a long time, right? But it's really gone. But when you got a floor at a company and you think you're going to get a bunch of AI agents doing all that work,
Good luck.
oh, sorry. You're dreaming in Technicolor, right?
Yep.
And so you've cut all these people and you need those 10 people back to guide the AI. So instead of giving them full-time employment, you're hiring them back in as flexible talent because you're not sure if you need them for 10 more years or only 10 months, but you're hiring them back on freelance, contract, fractional relationships. So, our partnership allows that to all happen because the enterprise customers need to trust that if I'm bringing these people back, okay, I'm going to bring them back as independent contractors. Let's verify that so that, the invoices can just fly as small businesses. Oh, no, in this jurisdiction, they don't meet the regulations as an independent contractor or a small business. Let's EOR them and run them through employer of record. And so you still can engage people that you want, that have the talent you need or the skills you need, but you just have to make sure you're doing it correctly. If they don't meet the criteria of being a small business in that jurisdiction, because there's really tight employment laws, employ them, right? And employ them through an EOR in a lot of cases is the right way to go to make that simple, right? So there you go. We've talked about our partnership and really excited about it.
And I love the analogy of you gut the floor and expect the agents to do everything. No, 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 no. The humans helping the agents are now 10 times more important than the humans you had not helping the agents. So, Jeff, with that, and for everyone, get ready for an exciting announcement. We let a little bit too much out, but that's okay. There's going to be something exciting coming up. Jeff, thank you for hopping on.
Thank you, Matt. This is awesome. Great conversation.